All right, everybody, thank you so much for coming. We're going to do just a quick sound check here because we've got you all here in person and we've also got folks online virtually. So I'm just going to do a quick sound check and ask if folks can hear me okay.
Everyone online.
Yeah, everyone online can chime in if they can hear us, okay? So you are going to start off this there. Okay, great. Awesome. Okay, so that, go right ahead. And if you can try to just come a little bit closer to our sound. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I'm Christina Serkovich. I'm the one who's been putting stuff up on the Facebook page. I am the acting chair for a new community organization called Swisshelm Forward. URA is nice enough, they're going to give us a little bit of time at the end of the meeting to explain what we are, but we're organizing, trying to help messages about meetings like this and the voice of our community interact so that you know when meetings about development decisions are happening and the city and city planning agencies and agencies like the URA know how people in some part feel about it. So thank you all for coming. Thanks everybody who's showing up online. And Lily's going to tell us about the solar farms, and then I'm going to come back to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, hello again, everyone. My name is Lily Friedman. I'm a louder. Okay. So my name is Lily Friedman, and I'm a manager of development projects here at the URA. Today we're here to talk to you about a remediation project at the site that we call Swisshelm Park Solar. So this is the outline of the site here in pink. For folks who can't see this, you should have a map that you can have in your hand. There's some handouts at the front table if you didn't grab one. But essentially the proximity of the site is this pink outline here. So this is our Swisshelm Park Solar site. So folks who have been coming to these meetings since about 2021, when we first shifted from Somerset phase 3, so a third phase of what folks know across 9 Mile Run to be Somerset phases 1 and 2 for Park. It was initially envisioned for this to be a third phase of that development project. About 4 years ago, 4 or 5, the URA and our development partner at the time came together and realized that the third phase was just really not going to be feasible for this site for a couple of reasons. First of all, the URA's board really had moved to push forward more affordable housing. It's really our mission, and especially with the new mayor's office administration, that is kind of like our top priority when it comes to housing. As well as the access road, which many folks in this room, many folks who have riding on over the years, talk about how beautiful the tree stands are on this site. And initially an access road was intended to be built through some of what we've heard are the nicest tree stands in Pittsburgh. So that option became infeasible, as well as the infrastructure around developing a water line for the site. So with this switch away from that direction, you know, we were talking internally about what highest and best use could be after multiple failed development concepts at this site over the years. For folks who have been at Swisshelm Park for a long time, you might remember at one point the URA was thinking about putting a grocery store here prior to some development. So for years and years, we've been trying to think about, you know, what could happen with this site. And our former real estate director, Nathan Clark, one day, he doesn't work for the URA anymore, but he came to me and said, one of the things that really holds Pittsburgh back in terms of development and growth is really our air quality. So Pittsburgh has some of the worst air quality east of Mississippi. And so what can we do to be a part of the shift to New York City, right, which would really push Pittsburgh forward? And one of the things we can do is be part of like a clean energy transition. So we started investigating what solar could be on the site. And because of its history, which many folks know of this area as the slags, it is true that it is currently a slag heap, which for folks who don't know, slag is a waste derivative of the steel manufacturing process. And so for years, the previous owner of this site, Duquesne Slag, which they owned the site until about 1972, they were dumping this waste derivative on the site. And so for folks who have been to the site, which I know none of you are ever trespassing on our land, you haven't been there before. But if you ever see kind of like a black rocky material, then that is what is the slag. And so this poses some public health issues for our community, right? And that's why we really tell people that they should not be on the land in this point. And that's because there are a number of heavy metals in the slag. So a couple of which that we found are like arsenic, iron, manganese, gallium, and vanadium. So those are some of the metals that are on the site. And whenever there's dust that is picked up, it can be, and it is unhealthy for human lungs, especially smaller things, for example. So for that reason, the URA is actually under a consent order to remediate this site. So what that means is that the URA entered actually during the first phases of the Somerset development, the URA entered into this agreement. And essentially what it means is that in order to develop on the site, the URA would need to remediate it first. And so we are obligated to do this. We're under decree to remediate the site. So that's why we're here today. This is something that the URA must do. It is a public health issue to leave the slag exposed. And we're really excited to have this potential use moving down the line to develop solar. And so moving into the next phases, as I mentioned, today we're here to talk about phase 1, which is the remediation of the site. Or site. The next phases, which we anticipate down the line, there's going to be a phase 2, which is the solar development, which can't occur until after we've remediated the site. The solar development we anticipate to occur in these flat cleared acres. And since none of you have been on the site, I know you haven't seen it, but there are 15 acres of flat cleared land on the site. And so we are planning to have solar developed there. And part of the goal of using those already cleared acreage is to, minimize the tree cover coming down because of how special it is in this area. And so that is going to be phase 2 to develop the solar on the flat cleared areas. And then phase 3 is going to be subdividing the site and dedicating the area that's not used for solar to the city of Pittsburgh for a grid park extension. So the entire site is about 70 acres, you can see 59 acres here. We're intending 15 to become solar, and the rest of it will be dedicated to the city of Pittsburgh to extend the park. And so jumping back to the first phase, the remediation, we're not just going to be remediating the solar area, we're remediating the entirety of the site so that it can be dedicated to the city, and it will be healthy for folks to traverse as the park extension. So those are the first 3 phases. And I see Councilmember here. I don't know if you wanted to give a quick shout to anybody that on this class here. No, I don't think so. Okay. Great. All right. Well, thanks so much, lady. No worries at all. I'm thrilled that you're here. So that's a little bit about the phasing. And so as I mentioned today, we're really concerned about the first phase, which is going to be the remediation. And so the reason that this meeting is happening today is that the URA is planning to release an invitation to bid for a contractor to do the cleanup or remediation of this site. You can expect that invitation to bid to come in August and September, so within the next couple of months. And so we're here to give you all a heads up that this is coming. It's important to not surprise anyone that this is coming. It's been in the works for a long time. And for folks who might remember our last community meeting here in October, we have lots of cute decorations all around because I know that they do Halloween dances here, which is very cool. But the last meeting we talked about a grant that we were applying for. for. It was the EPA Brownfields Cleanup Grant. We're asking you all for input about the different strategies that we should use for the remediation. So with your help, we were awarded the grant. It was a $2 million award, which filled the gap for us to move forward with this project. So we're super excited to have been awarded that grant, and now that means that we can move forward with the remediation. So what is the remediation exactly? You might be wondering. What it's going to look like, and this is, for folks who were here for last meeting, you might remember we were considering a number of different options for remediation. That was part of our last meeting, and we have landed on one. So our invitation to bid will ask that contractors do a 12 inches of cap and cover. So that's the approach that we're going to use for remediation. So cap and cover means that the contractor is going to bring in enough clean fill to cover the site, and the cap is going to be what holds in that clean fill. And so that is going to look like a topsoil and vegetative barrier. So when you look at the site after remediation, it will look like a vegetative meadow. And so we've gotten a lot of questions like, for example, one of them is, how is this actually going to stay in place? Like, isn't it just going to wash the 9 mile run, right? That's a question we've gotten before. And I want folks to know that we did a very similar approach across 9 mile run on the other side. And actually, the ecology of 9 mile run has been like better than ever in the past decade. So it really has not affected it negatively. Separately from my work at the URA, when I was a master's student at Chatham, we actually went in to study the stream quality at 9 mile run. It was very cool. We were like electrocuting species like very temporarily and then floated to the surface, and we did a whole species count. And there was like a salamander for like the first time in like a decade. So that's just a small story that is telling like a larger story about the history of 9 mile run that it really is coming back in the last decades. And folks who know the history of Somerset Phase 2, you know, that has been within that time period. So we feel confident that this approach, because we've done very similar things across 9 mile run, is not going to negatively affect the ecology of 9 mile run. And really we feel excited because really much can't grow on the side. So that's the reason why these areas are still relatively flat here, because it's not great like soil structure for anything to grow on it. And so once we replace it with that vegetative meadow, which we expect to prioritize native planting on the entirety of the site, we expect that actually will enhance the biodiversity. So that was really the goal of the first phase, which again, that's the one that we're here to talk about tonight. I'm happy at the end to take questions about all 3 phases, but I wanted to clear with you all tonight that only the remediation is what is moving forward at this time. So I want to speak a little bit to timeline here. So I'm going to move this forward on and pull up the timeline. And if you don't, you can get one at the front where you signed in. So here is the timeline for the next couple of years. So here we are together today in 2024. In Q3, so August through September, we intend to release the invitation for the remediation specifically. So again, phase 1 is happening. In Q4, we anticipate executing contracts with the selected remediation contractor. So by the end of the year, the URA is planning to execute these contracts. Q1 of 2025, weather dependent, right? It might change up our schedule a little bit. We've got remediation construction starting. So I know a lot of folks here live in the neighborhood and are worried about truck traffic and vehicular traffic. So I want you guys to keep this date in mind. This is when you can expect that starting. We expect the construction to take about 1 year. So we can jump all the way to Q1 2026 when we see remediation construction. And so you can expect that there will be vehicular traffic during that time related to the construction. It's not necessarily going to be every day. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the number of vehicles. But first I want to focus on the timeline. So in between that 1 year, you'll see we've got a couple other stars here. You'll see we've got solar RFQs. And so for folks who don't know, there's some legislation right now in Pennsylvania related to community solar, which we're hoping will pass. I like to say that I'm crossing my fingers, but I'm not holding my breath, right? It's kind of unclear to say what could happen in the next year related to community solar. That's part of the reason that's why we're waiting to release this RFP. I know folks in the neighborhood. Yeah, sure. So I know folks in the neighborhood have said, hey, we would love to have the solar that's developed on the site on my home, right? And on my end, I would love to see that happen too. Like, it's very cool for me to be able to generate community solar or solar in the community and to be able to power the homes right by it, right? And so the issue is that without community solar legislation, we couldn't develop this solar and then give it out to a number of different off-takers is the term. So I couldn't give it to like 50 different houses. Right now, without community solar legislation being passed, we have to use the net metering approach, which means that our solar development can only share with one off-taker and one meter. So if one of your homes was big enough to use 3 megawatts of solar, then we could talk. But given that's not the case and community solar legislation hasn't passed, it's not an opportunity that's available to us at this time. Again, we're waiting, like basically as late as possible to release this RFP in case potentially things change politically within the next 6 months. At that time, we'll release the RFP for a solar developer. We will review the review committee will have the developer about 1 quarter later. And when the remediation construction is complete, if all goes well, our solar construction can start the quarter after that. So that is our general plan here. Of course, in the third phases didn't really fit on our reports here. We don't have Wi-Fi, it's outside with it. But presentation, but I like our old school. It's how we always used to do, so I love it. But yeah, all that to say that I want to talk to this, but we expect the solar construction to take about 6 months up to a year. Once that's complete, is when we'll be working to dedicate the remainder of the space that has not been stopped to the city of Pittsburgh for third-party extension of about 50 acres, so very significant. I want to talk a little bit about access roads now. So I'm going to bring forward that. So for folks who have been following this project for a long time, in 2021, we actually did a survey of the access roads. Some of you may have responded to that or remember. And here's what we proposed in the survey as the 3 routes. We talked about Goodman Street. We talked about Love Street. And we also talked about using the 9-mile run trail from commercial as an access point. What we heard in that survey, I want to be clear that Love Street is included in this, but it's not eligible to be the full access route because of some of the tight turns. They're actually off of this map, but we imagine that it will be difficult for the larger construction vehicles to make those turns. So we've always thought about Love Street as a secondary access route, and especially for maintenance once we're in future phases and the solar panels are off the ground. Smaller vehicles will be able to come down Love Street, but it's not going to be eligible from what we understand to be the only access route. So Love Street has always been secondary. The 2 we've been considering as possible for the main are Goodman and a 9-mile run trail. And so what we heard from you all when we did that survey was that Goodman Street and 9-mile run were actually pretty even in terms of the number of people we wanted both. Obviously, with just Goodman Street, all the truck traffic is coming through the neighborhood, which really affects neighborhood folks heavily. And so that's an advocation for doing having a secondary account. That a lot, it makes perfect sense. One of the reasons why, the initial plan for Sunset Phase 3 was a challenge, because we knew we didn't want to set as much traffic. So we expected that, and then also what we heard from folks is that, by doing 9 Mile Run Trail, you're actually affecting a whole nother group of stakeholders, right? Who use the trail for future, who might not consider it. So we got people at both ends advocating for both routes. And so what we've done with our zoning development review submission, which is how we bring this entire project through the variety of city planning bodies of the city of Pittsburgh. So that includes DPW, Department of Public Works, DOMI, Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. It also includes our friends in forestry, who will be looking at our tree plan. So for anyone in the room who is really worried about what it means for these access routes in terms of the trees that might come down, the URA will be creating a tree plan for the forestry, which will sign off on the tree plan that will say exactly every tree that we need to come down based on this development. We have to have a plan to either replant it or pay the city of Pittsburgh and money that it would take them to replant that tree. And so again, the goal of this development is to bring down as few trees as possible. Most of them are going to be in this kind of flat weird area where the solar already is. And as I mentioned before, not a lot grow there. So you're seeing a lot of weed trees on that part of the site anyway. It's not a lot of like the heavily established growth or old growth that we're really excited about for the rest of the site that we want to preserve. So for that reason, where most of the trees are there, some of them are going to be along the access routes. But again, we have a plan to either replant those or to pay the city of Pittsburgh so that they can replant them on. And all of that is included in our pro forma, so we have built into our budget the ability to do so. So essentially what we've done, as I'm saying, is to include the 3 access routes in our plan. And essentially, once we've gone through the planning commission process and the council has approved our conditional use, which is a part of our project because of the amount of earth that will be using in soil for the site. It will essentially be a decision between DOMI and Department of Public Works on whether or not that 3rd access route will be used. So we're still waiting on the final answer then. I feel like every time I come to these community meetings, I'm like, next time I hope to have an answer for you guys for the access route. We're still working on it, but those are the 3 options that we have submitted to the city of Pittsburgh. And just in full transparency, the URA is hoping that all 3 of them will be available. We are really hoping to minimize truck traffic through the neighborhood and create a traffic flow as the construction is happening on the site. So we want to see construction happen through good, and then be able to exit through the 9 Mile Run Trail. And so again, we're still waiting to see how this is all going to play out. We do have a letter of support at this time from the Director of Public Works that we're really encouraged by. So we will still, have to provide updates at a later time related to how all of that plays out. We've gotten a lot of questions about how this truck traffic will interact with the bridge replacement project. So I know a lot of you are aware of that upcoming project as well. I'm honestly really excited about it. I think it's going to be very cool. They're going to basically build the bridge right next to the existing bridge, demo the bridge, and then slide the new bridge into it for folks who aren't aware of what's coming. It's going to be pretty cool to see. But as you have probably heard, our timelines are very similar for these 2 projects. And so there actually will be a point that this trail is shut down for that bridge project as well. I was talking to the project managers of that site today. Actually, I have another meeting with them later this week. And essentially, they're going to tell you the same thing that I have at this time, which is, their schedule isn't totally confirmed But there will be some overlap between the projects. And I know that might seem like extra traffic at a time when it's already congested. And I hear that concern, but I am trying to look at the positive of it in that, it will be a less long period of time that the neighborhood would be bothered because we're overlapping these two projects at the same time. We have assured DPW that in situations where they will be the entirety of commercial, the URA will likely leave our access to our property and the city's property along that to support that really important project. So yeah, that's a little bit about the access routes here. On this larger map, I'm going to turn around here. I know it's a little bit difficult for you all to see. You've got a version hopefully in your hands. But it shows the limit of the remediation and happening. And so it's actually this kind of lighter yellow color in here. You can see the paths here. You can see this area up here. You can see that it kind of snakes around here. So this is the entire area that has exposed slag and that the fill will be coming in to cover. So yeah, if you have any questions about exactly where it is, feel free to get in touch. There is a wetland on the site over in this area over here. A little bit up here. We will not be disturbing the wetland whatsoever with this development. That is going to be a huge priority of our construction, preserving that wetland. So for any folks who are worried about that, that will definitely be covered. Okay, so we covered a lot. I want to talk a little bit about the truck traffic that can be expected. So we talked about the routes. We talked about, our work with the city to formally define what that's going to look like for you all. We'll talk a little bit about what it's really going to look like once this kicks up. So assuming we have about 40,000 cubic yards of cover material, and the total volume capacity of an average truck is about 15 cubic yards, then we're looking at about 2,667 truck trips to complete the project. When you add a couple additional trips, right, for materials, gravel, equipment mobilization, we're expecting roughly 2,700 trips. So if we're able to accomplish 6 trips per hour at 80 hours a day, or I'm sorry, 8 hours a day. We're looking at 55 to 60 days of hauling in a 1 year. So when you think about how much material that is, it seems like a lot, but 56 days theoretically, seems a little bit more manageable, I would think. And I know that that's, it looks a lot different in your community. And so I understand that this is going to be a challenge for everyone who lives here. But I just want to reinforce that we are under consent order and agreement to do this work. So we don't have an option here. The URA has been obligated to remediate this site for 20 years, and we have been fully slacking on our obligation, and we're here to make that right. With the unique opportunity, we have American Rescue Plan Act dollars that have come in to support this effort. $4 million are coming to the city of Pittsburgh from the federal government to make this happen. And yeah, we won the award earlier this year from the EPA with a lot of competition to win that. So thanks again to everyone that came out to our last meeting and provided feedback, because I think we did a great job with that, and that was part of everyone. So yeah, we're thrilled with this project. It's going to move forward. We're really, excited to create some clean, covered site for you all to trespass on. No, I'm just kidding. To use what is legally permissible, as I know you all will consider. So yeah, I think it covers kind of like the main content of the site in the project, and what we're talking about for, again, is this first phase, which is the remediation and cleanup of the site. Before I open it up for questions, I want to answer some of the questions that we've already gotten from you all. So I'm going to run through those. And then once I go through this list, we can open up the questions to the wider group. So the first question we got is, what is the timeline for the start of remediation and end of remediation? So we've already run through that a little bit. I'm just gonna throw this back up here. I don't know if folks online can see it, but they've already seen it. And this is all on our website too. So if you are having trouble seeing it, please feel free to go to the URA and you can search Swisshelm Solar. And all the information about the project will bring it up, as well as the timeline, which I updated today, so it's going to be accurate. So yeah, we talked about the timeline already. We talked about the start of the solar farm construction as well. That was a question. We got a question about how many trucks. We talked about that. We talked about how much they'll carry. I got a question about how much each truck will weigh. I don't know the answer to that, but we can work on that for you. I also got a question, which we got before, and it's a really good one, about the route, but also it says some of the streets are in bad shape already, and these trucks will cause extra wear and tear. Will anyone be responsible for fixing the street as existing potholes expand? And so we have ran into our invitation to bid. I just checked this today to be sure. The contractor shall avoid damage as a result of his operations to existing sidewalk, street, curbs, pavement, utility, except those which are to be replaced and removed as part of the scope. Adjoining property, and they shall own expense completely to repair any damage thereto caused by their operations. So that means that they will be obligated to fix any repairs that are needed to any existing streets, any curbs, any properties. I see one question in the back. I'll get to you first as soon as we run through this list. Okay. So how will this project interact with the bridge project? So I talked about this a little bit already in terms of access routes, but I also want you all to know that there is a public meeting related to the bridge construction that is going to be taking place August 14th. So this is going to be a time if you're curious about that development. I would recommend going to the PennDOT website and informing yourself about that public meeting, because that will be a chance for you to virtually ask your questions about that development as well. I mentioned that we're coordinating with them. So we've been doing regular meetings with them for over a year now to talk about our project. They are going to be getting started very soon. So I think I told you all at our last meeting in October that you could expect construction to start moving this summer. That is true. August and September, they're going to start laying down environment, penciling the sediment controls around there. You will see construction vehicles starting to coalesce around that area, and you will see sedimentation control coming up around the site. And yeah, in 2025 is when they will start, building the new bridge. So there will be definitely some overlap with our project. We expect the main overlap to actually be the first quarter of 2026. Which, if you're looking at the timeline, that's around when we are going to be finishing our construction. So that's when they're really going to be ramping up with the closures, as well as their own use of time on a run trail. So that is kind of going to be what I understand is our main point of overlap, but we will definitely be working in a similar area for parts of 2025 as well. Okay, the next project is, or the next question is, are you just burying things, or will there be digging during the remediation too? Will there be digging during the solar farm construction? If so, how will you mitigate contaminated dust blowing over our closest neighbors' houses and or contaminated runoff reaching the 9-mile run in Buffalo? And so this is a question that we got in our last community meeting, because we're considering a different approach for remediating the site. So for those who were here last time, you may remember we were considering an approach where we would mix new soil, clean fill with the existing slag material at the site to bring it to a level that wouldn't be an issue from a public health perspective. And it would minimize the truck traffic because black soil would be coming in. We've gone away from that approach. So now we're not going to be pulling up anything from the existing landscape as it exists today. Instead, we're just bringing in new soil. We're going to completely cap it. And again, we're going to cover it, with that vegetated meadow mix. So for that reason, we don't expect, a significant amount of dust to be coming up and going into the neighborhood. It's a safer approach. And we will definitely be working with our contractors, to implement sediment control at the site. So what exactly the strategy is going to be, we can't tell you yet because we haven't selected a contractor yet. But we definitely will be reviewing the proposals that come in with that in mind. Safety is a top concern for this site. And it's something that we'll be looking at in terms of their approaches once the proposals start coming in. Okay. We've gotten a number of like hearsay misconceptions about this project. So I want to clear some of those up for you all today. So one of them, this is land in Brick Park and you aren't allowed to develop there. This is not Brick Park. I'm going to turn it around to the other side. As you can see, bird's eye view a little bit better here. Brick Park. All over here, right? That Island Trail is Brick Park. This land in the pink outline here is owned by the URA, and it is considered off limits to trespassers on the site. And it is a public health issue for folks to be traversing it. We really encourage you not to. And so just to reiterate, this is not currently Brick Park. It is publicly owned land that is owned by the URA. Once we again complete our project, parts of the site will be dedicated to Brick Park formally, and then you will be able to traverse it as you see. Second, the solar farms were conceived of and designed to power the housing development at the Irish Center property. And since that is not happening, we don't need the solar farm anymore. That was never even thought of at all. So it was never something we were considering. We had not discussed that with the development team. It was never in the works. So it does not change our project whatsoever that the development of housing at that site does not occur. Third, the expansion of Somerset or Somerset Phase 3 is still happening. It is not. It is definitely not. We have cut ties with the developer that we worked on with the site before. Actually, in 2019, we have a formal letter with them cutting ties. We are not planning to move forward with housing on this site. Somerset Phase 3 will not be happening. We are moving to a new direction. Next. You're going to completely close off this area and the trails won't be accessible anymore. So it's true that we are going to be closing off the solar panels, right? There will be a fence around the solar panels. I want to talk a little bit about some future ideas that we've thought about that we're hoping we'll be able to implement, which is really that we're hoping that we're going to be able to make this solar development an asset for park users. So the way we've envisioned it, and we actually had an intern a couple of years back develop some signage for us about the history of the site, the history of steel in Pittsburgh, the history of the contamination. Talk a little bit about the remediation and talk about solar and how solar development works, how clean energy works. And so she developed a whole slew of signs for us, and we're hoping that we'll be able to kind of create little indents within the fencing so that folks can actually look at the solar and really make this like a destination to see the development and kind of learn as an educational opportunity to learn about clean energy. And so I know that folks who open here has now, I know that it's not what you want to hear, right? You want to keep using the public space, you know you're trespassing currently. And I understand that would feel like there's something lost, and we recognize that. But I'm encouraged by the possibility to not just have this like fenced off, like ugly space here, but really like make it an asset that folks can traverse, learn something as they're accessing the trails. I will also note that the major trail networks within this site are really over here. I know there's a big mountain biking community that uses some of those trails over there. There's also the trail, I think it's called, which comes along here. I just want to note that that is not URA on the land. This is owned by the railroad. So, if you're trespassing over there, it's not my problem. I'm just kidding. You shouldn't trespass there either. Please be safe while you're biking. But all that to say that, yeah, most of the trails that are actively used now, we're hopeful will still be able to be used once this development is completed and the land is safe to access for remediation and it is dedicated formally to the city of Pittsburgh. So the long-term planning here, right? This is how development happens. It happens slow, but we're thinking of how we can make this site usable to the public, and that's the goal. Okay. This project is just going to create a bunch of new trash that won't get cleaned up when those solar panels reach obsolescence. So in any contract that is signed with the solar developer, there will be a clause that they will need to return the site to how it looked when they started on it. So all of those panels, they won't be just left there, they won't be forgotten about, they won't be trashed and brick park. They will be taken off of the site once they have once they have finished their intended lifespan, which we expect to be around 50 or 50 years. Okay, you will be driving heavy trucks along the 9-mile run extension trail and damaging it. So as I mentioned, any damage that occurs in any of the access routes or roads or anything like that will need to be repaired before the contractor has finished their work. That's something, that cost will be built into their bid to the site. Also, we understand the trail is short at some point for construction vehicles. As if they're able to move forward with that access route, we will be widening the trail as part of this effort so that it will be safe for those vehicles to use. The project will lead to landslides. So we're working with engineers at this site. We're very confident that this project will not lead to landslides. We walked the site multiple times with some engineers who earthwork is their specialty. They're going to be working with us. We're going to be sure that that doesn't become an issue here. And the last is the contamination isn't that bad, and all that work is just going to lead to runoff that contaminates and clogs the streams and the local wildlife. So I talked a little bit about that before, but we have remediated this area before for some extent, phases 1 and 2. We're very confident that this approach is going to leave this area in a better place ecologically than where it is right now based on the slag in the site. Okay, that was the last of the question. I know you raised your hand multiple times.
Yeah, I just had a question as far as the road. Who's responsible for document before and after? You are a contractor or the neighbor?
If you see issues on the site, anywhere where the construction vehicular traffic is happening, I would encourage you to reach out to me. We appreciate any support and we're here to listen if you all have issues related to our contractor who we eventually work with. But in terms of responsibility, before the contract is closed out, the URA team, we have a great team of quality control inspectors over here to the side of the audience. And before we close out any contract, they review the work that was done and ensure that everything was fulfilled and, in this case, put back to where it was so that nothing is out of place after the.
So the URA will document the road access in and out of the site so that the contractor can be held responsible for repairs.
We will visit the site. I don't know about documenting every single inch of roadway, but if there are.
Say this is the way the road works on the day it starts. This is the way it works when it's over.
Yeah.
That way you can nail the contractor.
Yeah, we accept that. Yeah, I totally understand. I know that Pittsburgh roads are a mess and we all deal with that and it is a challenge. I will say that, likely what will occur is that the roads which we know that our contractors are accessing, we will definitely review those roads and their routes to the site afterward. And it's not likely that we'll say like, oh, this pothole was there, you know, when we started the project, so we're not gonna fix that one, right? Like, we're likely gonna ensure that those roadways are traversable, whether, you know, the contractor specifically created the issue or not. So I think, you know, like I said, the goal is to leave this better than we found it, right? And again, if y'all are having major issues with potholes, like you have my contact info, I'll give you my card is out front. Feel free to contact me. And yeah, I'm happy to hold our contractors accountable on your behalf. So, you know, you can always reach out.
I have two questions. Sure. Especially right now, then where I my dog was maybe 40 or less. Will people be able to park on the street? Not everybody has parking on their property. To be able to move those cars.
To be able to move.
Lily, can you repeat your message? Because you talked about it, we get her.
Sure. So the question was, what is going to happen to the cars that currently park on the street? And I think that some of the larger traffic questions related to the access route, we are going to have to defer to our contractor, who is going to be designing exactly the way they need to go. And so what I can tell you is that once we select the contractor, we anticipate having another meeting where they're here with me up here, and we can answer more specifically some of these questions that I can't answer right now because it ultimately is going to be their plan.
Okay. And my second question is, at least in the first block of Whitman Street and many of them in the second block, we don't have sidewalks. My property goes right up to the street. So if they damage my property, who pays for that?
They'll pay for that. That is included in the language. So any private property that they damage, in addition to public, they are responsible.
We talk about holding your meeting. When you talk about having that totally great.
Yes.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, yeah, sorry. So the question was, we had talked about fully remediating the land as well as capping. So the question was about the verbiage that is used. Does that mean the same thing? And the answer is yes. Like, capping is, we are fully remediating the land to a spec that the Department of Environmental Protection, or DEP, has approved. That plan, that remediation plan, includes a cap and cover approach. So it doesn't necessarily mean that remediation at another site is also gonna include a cap and cover approach. I don't want you to think that those words are interchangeable, but in the case of our project, cap and cover is our remediation plan for this particular site. Feel free to finish.
So, always remediate so that, you know, sort of
Exactly.
Lily, can you repeat it?
She's just still asking the question, but as soon as she's finished asking it, I will repeat it for the larger audience. Thank you.
My other question is what happens to buildings for a
So the question we got was, is the URA still going to own the land? And is the entirety of the site fully remediated? And so the answer is the URA intends to be, at this point, to be the long-term owner of the solar developed the land that the solar will be developed on. So these 15-acre pads are intended to remain in URA ownership. And so how it will work legally is the URA will enter into a land lease with a solar development team that could include an off-acre, or it could be just the solar developer themselves. And they will lease the land for about 40 to 50 years is what we've been seeing lately. And after that point, the land will come back to the URA and look for the contract exactly how it looked when they got the land. And the remainder of the site, which is not going to be developed for solar, will be owned by the city of Pittsburgh as a work park extension.
So a big chunk of that land that's gonna be remediated is under tree cover right now. And so are they gonna be able to remediate around those trees? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we've worked with the DEP to allow us to, like essentially what's happening on that land that is already heavily covered with vegetation, it is effectively capped by nature, right? So the slab is actually not visible to the eye and therefore affecting anyone's public health when it is already capped by the tree cover. And so those areas that are already vegetated, the URA will not need to cap and cover those areas. I'm just going to turn this around. And sorry, I didn't repeat the question. The question was, at this point, what we understand is that we will not need to cap and cover anything that already has just a naturally occurring vegetative cover, since that's what we're doing to the area of the slack that isn't covered. So we won't need to take any trees down to clean up the site, which is a win for us, and it's something that we're a little worried about how the DP would take that, but they have like understood our position. And a lot of those areas are heavily sloped. So some of the steeply sloped areas are where you see the vegetation. And that's kind of why, like on the map here, which again, I'm sorry, I know the color is a little bit hard to see. But like this area here is steeply sloped. And that's an area where like there likely was slack historically, but because it's already covered, we're not going to need to remediate that.
I'll stay here, Lon. Anyway, so there's, I mean, a very steep cliff up where you
Billy,
get to that part.
can you just hold on, we have a little problem here for the online audience.
Oh, sure, we're gonna wait just a moment.
They can still see.
No. Oh, the phone?
I just. It's true.
So is that steep slope gonna have to be regraded so it'll look like a Meadows Hill, like Somerset?
No, so we are gonna do some earthwork on the steep slopes, but that's only for access. So just for anyone who couldn't hear, for the folks online, the question was, will the steep slope need to be regraded for remediation? And the answer is no, it will not. We are going to do some earthwork on the steeply sloped areas, so that is just to create a switchback for the access up to the site, and that is only if our 9-mile run access road is approved ultimately. So if we don't get approval for the 9-mile run access route, then we will not be creating that switchback on the site, and we won't be messing with the steeply sloped areas.
Yeah, the other question is, if y'all work with the Army Corps of Engineers, is there any thought of rewilding 9-mile run down through there? That's not on your property.
Right, not to my knowledge, we have worked with them, in terms of just exchanging communication about the wetlands, because the Army Corps of Engineers actually is the body that regulates that wetland area. So we have been in communication conversation, have documents kind of back and forth with them related to that specifically, but not the kind of final answer.
Last one is Love Street, similar to Goodman. Is it gonna have to be turned into a two-way street if they use it, widen for that reason?
So the goal of having the multiple access routes, is our hope is that they won't have to be two-way streets. Until we have the access route plan fully developed, I can't answer your question with 100% certainty, which for folks online, it was, is Love Street going to be a two-way street? But the goal with having the multiple access routes, and as I said, is our hope is that some of the access routes can be entrance only, and the others can be exit only. Likely exit with a 9-mile run, and all of them are allowable. And that will really improve construction flow. And I know these streets are small, so the idea of a contractor coming in and saying there's going to be 2 vehicles on that street at the same time, I think we all know that that's not going to happen. In the back,
Why in a residential area, small streets, are you going to the farm? Why don't you build it out? I'm not kind of perplexed by this.
yeah, sure. So yeah, it's very okay. The question for folks online was, why are you building an urban solar farm next to a small, quiet neighborhood with small streets versus building it out in the country? And so yeah, typically you see solar developed not in cities, right? You don't see it much because the land is more expensive here in the cities. And so it's cheaper to develop solar out in the country. So that is typical. We very much understand that. But the city of Pittsburgh has energy goals that we're really trying to meet. And we're excited because this project can be part of that solution for the city of Pittsburgh. There's also a kind of initiative within like Upper Appalachian region, which is bright fields. It's a term that means brownfield to solar development. And one of the things that we're seeing all across the region, because there is so much brownfield, there are so many brownfields which limit development in this entire region just because of the history of industrialization here. It's very difficult to develop a lot of these lands because taking them to the highest level, like we've really gotten lucky here, right? Like I kind of described, because it's once in a lifetime federal funding opportunity, and also a federal grant award, which is really difficult to get. And so it's really difficult to bring any of these brownfield sites back to productive reuse. And so we're in a unique situation here where we can develop this in an urban space. And we're excited about the opportunity because it allows us to use our energy here and really push forward this idea that cities can be energy producers too. Like we can develop here, and especially if community solar does launch at some point, we'll be able to give that to our neighbors. And so I think to answer your question, the reason why it's right for this site is because we tried so many different development opportunities here, and there's really not much else that we can do. And this is an opportunity for us to be a part of the energy transition, really show, that urban land can have this opportunity too. And the last thing I'll say is that once the solar is developed, one of the beautiful things about this plan versus the housing development, the site, for example, is that there's actually really minimal maintenance. So I understand this construction is going to be a challenge while it's happening for the solar. It's going to be much less for the solar, I'll tell you, than the remediation. The remediation is going to be the hardest part. And again, we're under consent order and agreement to do this. So we have to do remediation. The solar development is going to be minimal in comparison. And once it's developed, we're looking at 40 to 50 years of such minimal maintenance. So it's really going to be really not a lot of traffic to the site, versus effectively like any other development that will happen here, which will be significant traffic. So for that reason, it's kind of in our mind a good fit for the site. Yeah, okay. We covered
So the steep slopes that go down into 9 Mile Run there, you said those were considered, outside the remediation area because they're grown up with vegetation, but yet when I look at those, it looks like a lot of bare slag to me. Can you explain a little bit further about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I don't know, I'd be interested to see the particular areas that you're talking about,
I think
but
I'm talking about that area.
yeah, right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when I stand on the other side, and look at that, it's bare slag.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we'll do an analysis, like, this is kind of a general overview. I don't want you to take this exact limit, like, everything here is approximate. But the goal of this development is that whenever there is slag that is visible, that we will be covering it. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Question number 2.
Wait, sorry, for folks on the line, the question was, the steeply sloped area, it's visible to people who look at the site. They're saying that there actually is slag there versus on this map, it's showing it as steeply sloped, so there won't be as much remediation there. I'm just confirming that this is an approximate depiction on the map here, so we'll definitely be reviewing the entirety of the site for open slag and making that analysis at a finer detail level than what you see on this map here.
So, part 2 of the question relates to the solar project. So you were alluding to community solar, and given that, you know, the sun doesn't shine 24 hours, right? It's an intermittent source. So the whole idea of community solar and just solar not being fed into the grid, does this include energy storage then? I mean, how do you power your home and things at night when the sun's not shining? So how does that all work?
If it was a closed system, it would include storage for community solar. But again, we're not planning storage at this time because we're not building for community solar at this time. And yeah, we're not building brand new solar at this time, really. We're gonna cross that bridge in a year or so. And so, yeah, for folks online, the question was whether, because the sun doesn't shine for 24 hours, if we were to move forward with community solar, would there need to be a battery that would store the energy so that there could be electricity at night? And my answer was, if it was a closed system, then yes, it would. We're going to that.
I was on the summer stuff, the city URA basically did a grid work through phase 1 and phase 2 of the borings, check for pollutants, and I'm pretty sure when they developed that when the ground cover came up with these EPP measures, not well. Do you have records in your files from the Somerset projects at all?
There definitely are paper records of great at getting everything electronic in those days. We have done borings at this site. So that was one of like the first things we do when they were developing this map.
I don't know borings being done. It's just phase 1 and phase 2. Somerset, that's when the borings.
Borings were also done here.
Oh, they were?
Yes, yeah. So for folks online, the question was, do we have records from the previous Somerset development related to the borings on that site, and also were they done here? And the answer is that we have a number of paper files related to phase 2. I can't say I've been through every one of those, but they're definitely in our offices, and that yes, we have done borings at this site to understand the contamination. So it wasn't just at phase 1 and 2 we did borings, we also did borings over here on the site that we're talking through today. Yes.
Very helpful information about park traffic with the neighborhood and something else. Where are the trucks coming from and going to? When they need to arrive?
Yeah, so the question was, where will the truck traffic be coming from and going to when they leave Swisshelm Park? And I think that, until we have bids from our contractors, they will bid based on location for that. We do have some estimates that we use, to give you the numbers that I gave today, and I can share those like mileage estimates with you on how far they're going. I don't have those numbers.
Not distant.
Okay.
Maybe coming down the Radis, for example, and then it's not far enough, it's big.
Okay, sure.
They're bigger picture.
Okay, so yeah, it was, caveat that we're not talking about mileage here, but really the roadways. I thought you were asking mileage because that would determine how many trucks per day, right, which was part of the calculation I gave. But in terms of the actual traffic plan, again, that's something that we need to wait for the contractor to get on board because we don't know at this time exactly where they're gonna be bringing material from. And so until we know that, we won't know exactly, what their route is gonna be. And so that is another question that unfortunately we have to, at today's meeting.
If we communicate that one town of information.
It was a little bit quiet for me, but I think I heard that, the other communities that this truck traffic goes through, in addition to Swisshelm Park, should be made aware of the traffic. And yeah, definitely hear that, and I agree.
So there's a lot of like making mention, I think it's reference. Trespassing in that area, I'm sure you're aware of this, even in the modular. So if you want this for reason, some frequency, will there be a like notable change to how the area is, kind of like fencing, signage, as construction ramps up? No one else in this room or no one sees that area as part of what they should be, as they're applying for that.
Yeah, so the question was, for folks who are trespassing on the property now and may not hear about this project through the different ways that we're trying to get the word out, is it going to be kind of, is there going to be a clear plan to, for how the like property will be protected from folks trespassing on the site? And that's another one where the contractor will develop their plan of how they will shut down the site from public traffic. But it's something that we're actually, it's a question that I'm going to bring up with the PennDOT folks as well, because I think it's something that we can work with them to try and come up with a solution about. But I mean, I think the goal of closing off the site is safety, and you know, there will be times the site will be closed off to the public, and it will be, you know, to keep folks safe, and it will be the contractor's responsibility to develop that plan that will focus on the site.
I was going to piggyback off that question. You're planning on closing the site, you're obviously going to be a lot of remediation in that area. Close for hiking, close for neighborhood people. I mean, it's going to be a big active construction site, right?
Yeah, so the question was, the trails in the area, are they going to be closed for everyone during the construction period because for hikers, bikers, you know, because it will be an active construction site? And the answer is yes. For the period of construction, it will be, you know, closed off in the areas that are remediated.
Thank you.
I wanted to know, a lot of this will be determined until you select the contractor. So will their plans be required where they're awarded the bid? Like, what is the responsible contractor process?
Yeah.
And will they be local neighbors? Is there anything on tax?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was, will all of these questions that are being asked now, which I'm kind of deferring to the contractor who would bring online, will this be a part of what they prepare in their bid documents? And the second question was, will there be local labor on the site? And yeah, to answer your first question, it's something that we can definitely ask them, like in the specific bid package, which we haven't 100% finished yet. We're still putting our final touches on. Like we can definitely incorporate some of the feedback and questions that we heard today to include some of these specific questions. There also is a Q&A period that, you know, often occurs within our bid selection process. So if folks don't specifically speak to it in the materials that they provide, we can always ask them after before we select the contract.
But will the main selection criteria be based on the lowest bid, or are there other responsible contractors?
Yeah, so the question was, will it go to the lowest bidder, or are there other responsible contractor kind of like criteria that we would use? And yeah, the URA is not obligated to go to the lowest bidder. We have a really healthy contingency for this project budget. So we're not in a position where we are pinching pennies here. We're definitely going to go for the most responsible bidder. To the question of local labor, it's something that because this is federally funded, we actually have like some of the most stringent requirements around MWBE, so minority women-owned business enterprise certification. I don't know if there's a specific requirement about local labor based on our funding sources, but the URA, you know, we typically, you know, can see where local labor or like the local contractors are coming from. If they are local, then typically their workforce is local as well. So yeah, we try to, you know, work with local contractors as much as we can. But to your point, like we will go with the most qualified bidder. If that's a little bit further away, potentially bring them a little further away, of course, then it's something that, yeah, makes our job hard, right? Because we've got multiple criteria that are all important, but it's something that, you know, as you know, City of Pittsburgh authority is definitely of economic development, right? It's our goal to create, you know, business opportunities and partners in the City of Pittsburgh. So it's definitely something that we prioritize. Okay. Any new people who haven't asked the question yet? Okay.
Tell me, I read this in previous meetings, but where exactly is the solar energy development?
So the question was, where exactly is the solar going and who is it benefiting? And so at this time, there are a couple of different ways that this can play out. And because again, you know, we're really early on to be developing the off-taker approach. You know, it's good that we're definitely thinking about it, don't get me wrong, but we don't have the clear pathway at this exact point because of what might change at the legislative level around solar. I think without community solar legislation, right, like let's just assume that we continue business as usual, then it will be the URA's goal within the next year to identify one user, so one Duquesne Light account and meter within a 2-mile radius of the site. And so we've been in conversation with a few different folks. We don't have any like contracts signed at this point. It's very early on, so I can't share publicly. But we are working to define a user that will use either all 3 megawatts or as much of it as possible. And the reason that we're going to do that is because that will make it most desirable for a solar developer to be interested in our site. At like the fundraising and pro forma level of a solar developer is going to be thinking about our site and whether they want to respond. Having an off-taker engaged in the approach for financing the deal is going to make it a lot more desirable to them. So that's really the URA's goal. And we do have a few folks in mind at this point. So we are feeling, you know, optimistic that we're going to be able to manage that. Any energy that goes that one off-taker is not using will go back to the grid. And that will be in a portfolio of clean energy that anyone who is a clean light user could elect to use that clean energy portfolio. And if for whatever reason, you know, community solar doesn't pass and we can't find an off-taker, then the entirety of the energy would go back to the grid into that portfolio. But again, we're hopeful that we will be able to find an off-taker, and that will be the case. Go ahead, if you want. Yeah.
When you're talking, I don't know why. When you're talking about grid, that is.
Oh, sure. So yeah, so it can mean a couple things. So I'm talking about the local grid. And so that means like the pool of energy that Duquesne light users in this area are pulling from. So that is the local, what I mean when I say the local grid. And it's a good question because there's also the larger, like regional transmission grid, which in our region is PJM. So that includes Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland. And we're not going to go that route. So at one point we were looking at this site, right? We said, hey, we have 70 acres here. We could, if we were willing to like clear cut the site, if we were willing to basically use the footprint that was envisioned for Somerset Phase 3, right? Like this could be a really large site for solar development. Like we could be making serious power here, right? On a higher scale. If we were to have done that, then we would have been delivering our power to the PJM grid and market, which would have been larger transmission region. And obviously we didn't want to take that many trees down. That was a consideration. Even with the site that we have now, we could have gone a little bit higher than 15 acres likely, but there's a 3 megawatt threshold where if you're under 3 megawatts, then you have to go the net metering approach, which is that local grid for your Duquesne line. As soon as you go over 3 megawatts, you're mandated to go through the regional market. And at that, like basically smallest scale to go through the regional market, it wasn't the best idea for us. But ultimately the kicker was that for folks who don't know, the regional market has had a queue for new interconnections for solar facilities across the state. And that queue has gone so long, it's really actually quite sad for solar development in Pennsylvania that that's what's happening right now at the PJM scale. But the queue was so long that we were told that we wouldn't be able to put panels down until 2029. And the URA, like, we want to make something happen here. The site has been sitting. We weren't willing to just sit in an interconnection queue and, you know, just wait to see when it was going to become available for us. So by going this less than 3 megawatt routes, it was kind of the win for us ultimately. We're limited to the net metering, but you know, we don't have to take down a ton of extra trees, and we're still creating some good solar energy. Okay, so that was a little bit of a tangent, but hopefully that was interesting for folks who are interested in solar.
So one thing I just wanted to make sure was under the yard, I know there was that question about landslides, but a particular concern would be if trucks are driving down the 9-mile road. There's a lot of landslides happen there. So just making sure that it's on your radar that trail is like, seems like a particular vibrant.
Yeah, I think maybe. So the question was, the 9-mile run trail particularly seems like a landslide risk, and there have been issues with that. So the question was just to ensure that that was on our radar in the comment. And are you referring to the areas with like the high walls?
Well, so there's that. Yeah.
Okay.
Another part washed out and they closed the whole trail for 2 months, and actually, since you're on the trail, something more.
So yeah, the response was like, yes, in part that, but also other areas have been washed out. So part of, if we are able to use that 9-mile run trail, which I just want to continue to emphasize, like we do not have 100% approval for that yet. But if we are able to do that, then part of the goal of the contractor will be to widen the trail and put in essentially the infrastructure needed to make that safe for truck traffic. And so at this point, you know, as a project manager, for me, I know it's like, I look at it too, and I'm like, how is this possible? But like, we're working with some of the best engineers on this project. We've been working with them for years. They do great work for us. And I just got to trust my earthwork guys that they know what they're doing at the end of the day. And yeah, all I can do is say that like, I really have faith in our engineering team, that they're gonna create a solution, for the trails that will get safe like that, 100% will be their job. And it will be the contractor's job to execute that. Okay, go back.
Just a quick question, Somerset on phase 3, over with them, basically just gonna build a road right up into the section, and you bring a bridge near Duck Hollow, and that was a 2 entrances. Why can't, as a consideration, of a work road is coming off commercial, just, right up on the site, to do these 2,000 foot trucks?
Yeah, so the question was, in the prior plans for Somerset Phase 3, there was an access route trail that was coming, kind of just south of, the existing 9-mile run trail from, commercial up to the site directly. And so actually part of the reason why Phase 3 failed as a concept was because of that access route trail. In fact, I'd say it's like one of the #1 reasons, like the access to the site, that trail as well as the bridge. And part of the issue is that the tree stands that come from that site, like we would have to take down significant tree cover. And as I mentioned before, you know, for every tree that we're taking down on this site, we either need to replant that or pay the city to do that. And so the number of trees that are there, in addition to really not want it, like it being a priority for us coming into the project to maintain tree cover, especially the trees that are old growth, which they are in that area. It really was clear to us that we want to make use of the existing access routes and not create a new one through that area.
The solar plant that you're, how are the green credits converted? I mean, they're sold throughout a number of states. I'm assuming the contractor taking that.
Yeah, so so the question was the credits related to the solar, will the contractor be receiving those? Right?
Or is that getting paid? Tax credit, I mean, I was thinking, yeah, that's all solar, right? Like 3 or 4 different states, and bid it up with 3 or 4 different states, that's all bitched out and paid.
Yeah.
Whoever's getting it, could mean like, or, you know, greater reason, then they get that money.
Yeah, so the way the tax credits will related to the solar energy will play into this project is that essentially those will go towards the pro forma for the solar developer to basically make it their project pencil. In terms of how that will be paid back to the community, I think it's something that we can talk about when we go through that solar development process. So like in the RFP, we can talk about what that means in terms of those credits, but ultimately we're not quite there yet in the process. So.
And I'm assuming it's started with 2 questions. This is south, right?
So, yes.
That's roughly south. So where you're talking is that side. And that sits in the valley.
Yeah, so this is north on as we're looking right now.
Yeah, but that this is, and that same picture, this is south.
No, this is actually south in this picture.
Is that, okay?
Yes.
So that, but either way, that's the. No, that's it, you're coming down Love Street, which is working. And so then you're seeing land, and then it's tree covered. So that, who's ever gonna do this, right, has to put them on pretty high.
The panels?
Yeah, because they're tree covered, otherwise there might be getting solar, and that's solar, you're gonna have to not stop. Unless you have motorized walls.
Yeah, so the question is about whether tree cover will limit the number of panels on the site. And
Also from.
increase them.
Well, also from looking at Swisshelm Park, right, and you see, you don't really see anything, you see solar, you see trees. So you're gonna make smoke, and I have to make the guy that tree plenty of.
Yeah,
In other words, I'm just saying. Eye catching slash view. Look pretty nasty.
yeah, I mean, I think we're actually encouraged about the tree cover that separates the community from the solar. Like to us, that's actually a positive of the existing site. Given that south is facing this way and Love Tree is the east of the site, you know, we envision that the panels will be obviously facing south. And because of the topography of the site and the change in elevation, from our initial conversations with solar developers, they're not discouraged by the way the panels would be facing in terms of the existing tree cover. I'll also mention that it's not out of the question at this point that the panels might be rotating. That will be something that we'll determine down the line with our solar developer. But it's something that's not like 100% off the table as we're talking right now.
Thank you.
So how high will the panels be? Do you know that? And my other question, I'm just gonna take you all of them. Are the pro forma that you're discussing, are there feasibility studies that are available online from?
So the question is, how high are the panels going to be? And the solar development pro forma, are there feasibility studies online for review? And the answer is, I don't know how high the panels are going to be at this point. Again, once we start the solar development process, I think we'll have more thoughts about that. We're planning to work with PA Solar Center for that whole RFP process. They're like the best in the business in PA, and they know all of the local regulations, the way even folks like outside of Pennsylvania, you know, don't know as well. So I'm hopeful that in a future meeting that, you know, I'd love to engage them so that they might be able to answer some of these questions. And then in terms of the feasibility study, those numbers are actually like, it's not something that any developer would want to share publicly. It's something that they will work really hard to put those numbers together, and I don't see them like posting them online because the systems they use to come to those numbers are kind of like particular to each developer.
It just seems like a citizen data right to see the feasibility of this project and public for it.
Yeah, I mean, we're encouraged that it is feasible based on conversations that we have. Even the folks that I've talked to, they haven't shared their plans with us. If they had, then, you know, the public would be able to submit a right to know request, as this is a public agency, and you would be able to see all of the documents that I've seen. Because they haven't shared that with me, it's not something I can share with you.
I just question going down this entire road if we're not convinced that it's something that's going to make money for both the city and these private developers.
Yeah, I think so. The question is, they're worried about going down this road if it's not something that's going to make money for the city or these private developers. And I think that the way that energy markets fluctuate, that's always a risk that we're going to have. You know, it takes years to develop these plans, and there's always a chance that, you know, the market might shift at the time that we go out to bid for this project. So I just think any solar development in planning, that's always going to be a risk. That being said, I think the beauty of the way we designed this larger picture plan is that we've remediated this site to a level that is not just industrial, but it's actually residential. So we're remediating the site to the like highest level possible for any type of development, so that in the future, all of this money that we're spending in this phase right now, like we're not going to have to do this again, because no matter what future development is on the site, of course, we're here today telling you that we really think it's going to be solar in 1 year from now. But if, you know, something crazy, we have an election coming up, you know, if something really changes in the next year, right? Which is something we have to be mindful about in this political climate. Then, you know, we're putting ourselves in a position that worst case we come out of this, we've cleaned up the site. You know, it's now not a public health hazard. And we're in a much better position than where we started, even if for whatever reason the solar doesn't move forward, which which again, we really don't think that's gonna happen. We think we're gonna be in a good position a year from now, but, and it's not just contingent on whatever happens to the election, I want to be clear, but, yeah, so I think that, we're aware that there's always going to be that risk with when you're building energy systems, to a certain extent, but our partners that have looked at this site, have given us confidence that, it is going to move forward, and if it doesn't, we're in a better position.
The only thing I would just add is whenever it comes to the point where there are contracts with these developers, I mean, I think what we don't want, and someone touched on this earlier, is a bunch of outdated solar panels that are trash that are now left on city property. Because they know a whole lot about the city and they have good plans, but they don't have good maintenance plans. So like the only thing I would express to you guys is when you enter into those development contracts, make sure they take with them what they bring to the table.
Yes, that would be included in the contract. For the folks who are online, the question was to just ensure that no panels will be remained on the site after the development occurs. And yeah, that will be built into whatever development contract. For the next phase, again, here today, we're just talking remediation. That's what's moving now. That's what we're gonna be focusing on for the next year.
So, with the solar panel idea of fall through, if you are able to maintain a commitment to donate that other 50 acres to Pittsburgh Park.
We are moving forward with, the plan that we have now. I can't speak to what would happen if we were to adjust a completely different concept. But at this time, we're really excited about the park extension. And yeah, I think it would really be a challenge for us if the solar fell through because of how difficult it has been to develop this site. I personally, from my view, speaking for myself, not the URA, I don't really see any other uses that are going to be feasible here, given what, development prospects we've already considered. So in my mind, if we don't do this, I don't see any other options besides an expansion of Brick Park. But again, we would have to go back to the drawing board. I would have to, we would have to deal this internally with the entire, the URA leadership team. It's definitely not something I can answer today. But again, we're really excited about this plan. We're hopeful that it's going to go through as described, and we're really thrilled to be able to dedicate this land once it is safe, to be used back to the city of Pittsburgh. All right, it sounds like we've finished the question and answer section here.
Sorry.
We take a picture of this.
Is that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the same, all of it.
Yeah, I can definitely send it.
It looks a little bit different, that one looks a little bit different.
It should be the same. Yeah. But you're welcome to take a picture of it. Okay. Well, with that, I'm going to take my boards down. I'll be hanging out in the back, and I'm going to hand it over to our, warming community here.
Everybody, we don't just yet, so we have for 2 more minutes. We have 2 new community organizations, or revitalizing community organizations. One, I'm the acting chair of Swisshelm Forward. We're trying to become the neighborhood RCO. That's your registered community organization and acts as a conduit between the people who live in Swisshelm Park, Duck Hollow, along Forward, and Mount Royal with the city, so that we get to have our say in planning decisions before they're made. So that things like this are coming, and they have to listen to us. We have information about that fact. One of our main functions is to get information out. So we need ways to contact you. So if you're willing to, we have sign-up sheet, we also have QR codes you can scan to give us your contact information so that we can send you an email newsletter. You've seen our signs. Hopefully that's why you're here. The other organization, so this beautiful little community center, needs some help. There were, about 10 of us, 11 of us here over the weekend, cleaning out closets and pulling out stuff. We sorted a lot of stuff. It was really hard work, but a great team. There are new board members. You're also looking for help. We've been Swisshelm Park specifically, and you want to help revitalize the community center, make it the active, thriving place it should be. Please sign up for that. Also apply for that fact. And we found some lovely art